What if the world you've come to trust, rend, the one that feels solid beneath your feet, the one you wake up to each day and call reality, is actually a well-crafted illusion? From the moment you took your first breath, you entered a script already written. You didn't write the rules. You didn't choose the lens through which to see. It was handed to you, subtly, quietly, through lullabies and textbooks, through commercials and customs, through every "this is just the way things are" spoken by those who never questioned it either. You were taught to believe in boundaries, not just the physical walls around you, but the invisible ones, the limits on your potential, the ceiling on what's possible, the borders of what's real and what's dismissed as fantasy. They taught you to measure your life in years, in achievements, in paychecks and approvals. They told you success looked a certain way, that worth was earned, that safety lay in conformity, and that questioning the frame you were given was dangerous, rebellious, even foolish. But if you've ever felt that quiet, gnawing sense that something doesn't quite add up, you're not imagining it. That's the voice of your deeper knowing, the one that hasn't been fully silenced by conditioning. You've glimpsed the cracks in the frame. Maybe it was in a strange coincidence too perfect to be random, or in the way time seemed to stretch during a dream, or in that unexplainable pull you've always felt towards something more, a reality that feels truer than the one everyone else keeps insisting is all there is. Your attention, your most sacred resource, has been hijacked, not by accident, but by design, because the moment you start to see clearly, the illusion begins to collapse, and those who benefit from the illusion, they can't afford that. Think about it. From the moment you wake up, your awareness is under attack. Notifications, headlines, distractions, dopamine loops, designed to keep your mind shallow and your soul asleep. You're bombarded with curated noise that keeps you tethered to a version of reality that's predictable, controllable, and profitable for someone else. The systems around you don't want your clarity, they want your compliance. You were handed a version of reality that works as long as you never question it. It's made to feel logical, scientific, and rational, but only because it trains you to dismiss anything it can't measure, anything it can't monetize, anything it can't control. What happens if you start to feel energy when you walk into a room? That's woo-woo. What if you intuitively sense something before it happens? That's just your imagination. What if you believe your thoughts might influence outcomes? That's nonsense. The programming doesn't just tell you what to think, it tells you what to ignore. But here's the dangerous, beautiful truth. What you see is not all that exists. There's an entire dimension of reality operating beneath what you've been taught to perceive, not in some far-off galaxy, not behind a locked gate, but right here, overlaid onto this moment, hidden in plain sight. The secret is, you've already been in contact with it, you just didn't have the framework to recognize it. That subtle inner guidance, that moment of perfect timing, that strange unfolding where everything just clicked into place. These weren't accidents. They were echoes from the deeper field of reality, the field they never told you about. You were trained to trust only what you can see, touch, and measure. But reality is not confined to matter. It responds to energy, to consciousness, to intention. You weren't taught that in school, were you? You were taught to obey facts and figures, but never to explore the space behind your thoughts. You were taught to conform, not to create. You were told that who you are is what you do, but never asked to discover the stillness beneath all doing. This is not your fault. You were born into it. The deception was already in place, woven into every institution, every tradition, every reward system. It's subtle, polished. It looks like success, sounds like progress, but beneath it, something essential has been buried, your ability to see beyond the veil. And that's where it begins to shift. The moment you begin to doubt the story you were handed, something inside you stirs. A quiet rebellion, a sacred curiosity. You start to look between the cracks. You start to listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being. You start to remember, because none of this illusion could survive if you remembered who you really are. You're not a pawn in someone else's system. You're not a consumer waiting to be completed. You're not a mind to be programmed. You are awareness itself, ancient, vast, and free. The systems can't control that. they can only distract you from it, and so they try. Every day, with louder headlines, with shinier screens, with scarier narratives. But when you pause, when you take your attention back, the illusion weakens. You begin to see the programming for what it is, a dream within a dream. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start to question the chase, the endless striving, the need to prove, to earn, to compete. You begin to feel the weight of the illusion lifting, like fog burning off in the morning sun, and for a moment, clarity pierces through. Real, a flash of something more real than all the noise combined. That moment, that glimpse, is everything. Because once you know the illusion exists, you've already started to wake up, and once you begin waking up, the world can never look the same. Not because the outer world has changed, but because you have. You've started to shift your frequency. You've started to reclaim your awareness, and you've begun the journey toward the dimension they never wanted you to see. The truth is, it's not hidden behind closed doors, it's not locked in a vault, it's right here, woven through every breath, every thought, every heartbeat. But to see it, you must unlearn what you were taught to trust. You must be willing to let go of what you thought was real. You must be willing to see with new eyes. That's the first step, and now that you've taken it, there's no turning back. From the moment you opened your eyes in this world, you were taught to see through a particular lens, not a physical lens, but a perceptual one. You've been shown a version of reality that feels so absolute, so logical, so grounded in facts, that questioning it almost feels like madness. But what if this lens, this framework you've trusted your entire life, is not the whole picture? What if it's just one layer of a much larger, more fluid experience of existence? Right now, you live inside what could be called the third dimension, a dense, effort-driven world where things appear solid, separate, and mechanical. In this version of reality, everything is built around linear progression. You're born, you grow, you age, you die. Time marches forward in a straight line, and everything seems to unfold one moment after another, like stepping stones you're expected to walk across without pause or question. And inside this framework, you've been conditioned to believe that everything you want must be earned through struggle, that survival is your first priority, and competition is not just common, it's necessary. You are expected to chase, to climb, to outperform, to grind, and if you don't, you're told you'll be left behind, forgotten, or worse, insignificant. Look around. This belief system is etched into every corner of modern life. Schools teach you to memorize, conform, and compete. Workplaces reward productivity over presence. Society whispers that your worth is measured by your output, by how hard you try, how much you do, how exhausted you become in the process of making it. You've been taught to confuse stress with significance. In this third-dimensional view, you are separate from everything. Separate from others, separate from the earth, separate from source. You are told that you are a self-contained identity, a name, a story, a past, navigating a cold and indifferent universe that requires force to bend it in your favor. You've been handed a rule book for reality that says, if you want something, you must work hard for it. If you don't have it yet, it's because you didn't do enough. If you suffer, it's part of the process. That's just life. But here's the catch. None of this is absolute. It only appears real because of the lens you're seeing through. This lens of separation has a weight to it. It colors your thoughts with doubt and your emotions with fear. It tells you that your dreams are distant, that life is a competition, that scarcity is real. And most of all, it convinces you that this is the only version of reality that exists. When you accept this dimension as the ultimate truth, you begin to identify with its rules. You start to believe that time is rigid, that healing must take years, that transformation is slow and painful. That opportunity comes once in a while and must be grabbed before someone else takes it. In this worldview, life becomes a battlefield, and you become a soldier in a war you never volunteered for. It's why so many feel overwhelmed, why anxiety has become normal, why depression is rampant, because your soul knows there is more, but your mind has been trained to ignore it. And yet, even inside this dense framework, there are moments, fleeting moments, when something cracks. When a coincidence arrives at just the right time. When a thought becomes reality quicker than logic would allow. When you meet someone who feels like a mirror, though you've never seen them before. These are not accidents. They are echoes from beyond the lens, I1P, signals that something more is trying to get through. But the third dimension has armor. It resists anything it can't measure. It demands evidence, proof, logic. It doesn't trust intuition. It dismisses the unseen. And so, most people stay here, not because they must, but because they've forgotten that this reality is only a fraction of what's truly available. You've probably felt the exhaustion that comes with living this way. The constant striving. The quiet ache of not enoughness. Even when things go well, the satisfaction fades quickly, replaced by the next goal, the next challenge, the next hill to climb. That's the nature of the third dimension. It keeps you running in a loop, chasing fulfillment just beyond your reach. But here's the truth. The struggle is not your natural state. It's a symptom of viewing life through a fractured lens. There's a reason the grind feels so heavy. It's because it isn't aligned with your true nature. Your being wasn't designed to fight for worthiness. You weren't meant to live in constant tension. The more you try to force life from this place, the more you reinforce the illusion. The third dimension isn't evil. It isn't wrong. It's simply incomplete. It serves as a playground of contrast, a stage for learning through friction. And in many ways, it's a teacher. Because it reveals what happens when you forget who you are. And who you are is not limited to this version of reality. The real deception is not that the third dimension exists. It's that you've been taught to believe it's the only thing that does. What if the effort you've been pouring into success, worth, and happiness has been directed at the wrong level of reality? What if everything you desire already exists, not far away, but out of phase, just vibrating at a frequency you haven't been taught to tune into? There's a deeper truth pulsing beneath the noise, a dimension not of struggle, but of resonance, not of separation, but of coherence. And it's not far. In fact, you're already standing inside it. The difference is awareness, but to become aware, you must first question the lens. You must become willing to see the cracks in what you were told is solid. You must understand that linear time, cause and effect, effort, and the illusion of separateness are all aspects of a limited operating system, one that is outdated and unable to contain the fullness of your being. So if you feel like life has become mechanical, if joy feels fleeting, if time feels like a race you're always losing, it's not because something is wrong with you, it's because you're being invited to see beyond the frame. The third dimension asks for obedience, but your spirit is calling for vision, and once you begin to notice the patterns, once you start catching the glitches in the system, the things that shouldn't be happening, but do, something shifts inside you. You begin to loosen your grip on the illusion. You begin to sense that everything you've been chasing might already be right here, hidden in plain sight. But to find it, you must look through new eyes, and that begins with the decision to question the old ones. Have you ever had a moment where reality felt off? Like a faint tear in the fabric of what's supposed to be normal? Maybe it was a flash of déjà vu, wizardas, that strange, eerie feeling that you've been here before, even though you know it's impossible. Or perhaps it was a sudden thought that came to you moments before someone spoke the exact same words aloud. These moments slip past quickly, often dismissed, easily forgotten in the busyness of daily life. But deep down, something lingers. A sense that you just witnessed a glitch in the system. You've been taught to rationalize these experiences, to wave them away as tricks of the brain, harmless coincidences, or the result of a tired mind. But what if they're not accidents? What if they're signals? Soft but deliberate, designed to help you remember that the structure of reality isn't as solid as it pretends to be. Imagine you're inside a dream, and for a fleeting second, the edges begin to blur. The logic begins to unravel. That's what these moments are. They are the system whispering, "There's more than this." Most people don't listen. they shrug it off and return to their schedules. But if you're here, if you've felt that crack in the veil, then you know, something is stirring, something real. Synchronicity is not just coincidence, it's coordination. It's alignment between your internal frequency and the external flow of events. When you're in sync with this deeper field of existence, the universe begins to communicate with you in patterns. You think of someone, and they call. You consider a new path, and signs pointing to it begin showing up everywhere. In songs, numbers, symbols, chance conversations. It starts to feel like life is orchestrated, not random. And that's because, in those moments, it is. These are not anomalies, they are evidence. Evidence that reality is much more fluid than the third-dimensional world would have you believe. In that world, everything is supposed to follow a linear, mechanical path. Cause leads to effect. Time moves forward in one direction. Everything is separate. Everything is fixed. You were taught that world is the only one that's real. But when synchronicities start stacking up, when time bends, when intuition proves itself before logic catches up, that rigid frame begins to warp. The third-dimensional construct you were born into is like a carefully coded program. It trains you to think inside of rules, and as long as you obey those rules, everything feels predictable. But the moment you start tuning into energy, 2A, your own, and the world's, you begin to notice patterns that aren't explained by the rules, and it becomes harder to pretend that everything is just matter and motion. Maybe you've felt time stretch before, in moments of deep emotion or complete presence. Maybe you've felt your thoughts magnetize events, or had a dream that unfolded in real life days later. These aren't glitches in your brain, these are cracks in the matrix of the third dimension, places where the deeper truth begins to leak through. There's a reason these cracks appear more frequently when you're quiet, reflective, or in transition. When the noise of the world fades, your awareness sharpens. You begin to notice the subtle choreography of reality, the signs that seem just for you, the nudges, the winks, the messages that feel like they're coming from a place beyond time and form. What's really happening in those moments is a shift in perception. You're not leaving the third dimension. You're seeing beyond it. You're catching a glimpse of the wider field, the hidden architecture beneath the visible world. And with every glimpse, the illusion loses power. The more attention you give these moments, the more they begin to multiply. Life becomes less about control and more about flow. You stop trying to force outcomes and start learning to follow the current. You begin to sense when you're in alignment, that strange ease, that unfolding without effort. And when you're out of alignment, things feel sticky, chaotic, or draining. That awareness becomes your compass, and it's far more accurate than anything logic alone could give you. But the system you were born into isn't built for alignment. It's built for control, and synchronicity threatens control. Because it implies that there is a deeper intelligence guiding things, one that can't be tracked, monetized, or predicted. One that responds to your energy, not your status. That's why most people are taught to ignore these experiences, to treat them as coincidences, to forget them. But you didn't forget, did you? Something about those moments stayed with you. The impossible timing, the eerie feeling of being guided, the realization that your inner world was being mirrored back to you. That's because those experiences were never random. They were invitations. Invitations to look deeper, to question the script, to consider the possibility that you're not just living inside reality, but co-creating it, whether you realize it or not. And once that idea takes root, everything changes. You start to live with your eyes open. You become sensitive to the subtleties. You start to listen not just with your ears, but with your entire field of being. You notice the shift in a room when someone enters. You feel the pull towards certain people or places, even when you can't explain why. You begin to trust your intuitive hits, even when they defy logic. And most importantly, you start following them. That's when life begins to open. Not because you found a new belief system, but because you've begun to remember how reality truly works. The veil gets thinner, the rules get looser. Time becomes more like a suggestion than a law. And you discover that there's a field of intelligence all around you, listening, responding, shaping. You've probably felt it before, in moments of awe, in love, in loss, in nature, in silence. When the mind gets quiet enough, the illusion flickers, and something else shines through. That something is the deeper truth, and it's been with you the whole time, waiting for you to notice. So the next time you experience déjà vu, pause, feel it. The next time a synchronicity shows up, don't just observe it, honor it, speak to it, ask what it's trying to show you. This is how you step through the cracks. Not by force, but by attention. Not by proving, but by perceiving. Reality is not broken when these moments occur. It's revealing itself. The system isn't glitching. It's inviting you to see that the program was never the full picture. The truth is, reality bends for the one who remembers who they are, and every synchronicity is a whisper from that truth, calling you home. You don't need to decode every sign. You don't need to analyze every moment. You only need to listen and trust. Because these experiences aren't anomalies. They're echoes from the secret dimension, and when you learn to follow them, they'll take you exactly where you were always meant to be. Every day, you wake up and step into a world you believe is real because your senses tell you so. You see your surroundings, you hear the sounds, you feel the textures, taste the food, smell the air. Everything seems physical, structured, and grounded in place. You call this life. But just beneath this familiar surface, there exists something else, a hidden layer of reality, a living field that most people never notice, not because it's distant or mystical, but because it's subtle. It doesn't shout, it hums, it whispers, and unless you're attuned to its frequency, you'll miss it completely. This layer is not separate from your life, it overlays it. It weaves through your moments, colors your thoughts, and shapes the outcomes of your experiences. You've walked through it 1,000 times. When you've felt the unspoken connection with a stranger, when you've sensed that someone was going to call moments before your phone lit up, when you've had a dream that later mirrored waking reality. These weren't random. They were glimpses, soft openings, into a dimension built not from physical matter, but from energy, vibration, and consciousness. What you call reality is only a filtered version of what actually exists. Your brain is like a radio dial, locked into a particular frequency band, one that emphasizes the tangible, the measurable, the logical. But this dial can shift, and when it does, your awareness begins to pick up signals from another station entirely. A station that's been broadcasting the whole time, patiently waiting for you to tune in. This hidden realm does not operate by the same rules as the one you've been taught. It doesn't function through effort, control, or linear progress. It responds to intention, to emotion, to the silent energy you carry into each moment. While the outer world measures your success in steps and tasks, this inner field reads your resonance. It moves not because you push, but because you match its vibration. You don't bend it with force. You align with it, and it bends reality around you. Imagine for a moment that everything you encounter is only half the story. The people in your life, the situations that unfold, the opportunities that come or go. What if they're all moving in response to something deeper, something underneath what your 5 senses can detect? You are not reacting to life. You are constantly engaging with a field that mirrors you back to yourself. Thoughts are not confined to the space between your ears. They ripple outward. Emotions are not private events. They broadcast, and this hidden field picks up on all of it. It takes your dominant frequency and begins to structure your reality around it. This is why, when you're in a state of fear, everything seems harder, more chaotic, unstable. But when you're in alignment, in peace, in gratitude, in flow, life starts to respond. Not because you're lucky, but because you're vibrating in tune with the field beneath the noise. Modern science has only just begun to acknowledge what ancient mystics have known for thousands of years. Consciousness, that your consciousness is not confined to your brain, and reality is not as solid as it seems. Studies in quantum physics have shown that particles behave differently when observed. That matter is affected by awareness. That reality itself is not fixed, but fluid, shaped, at least in part, by the very act of consciousness interacting with it. But even without the science, you've already felt this. You've had days when everything just works. When you think of someone and they appear. When you set an intention and it unfolds effortlessly. You might have brushed it off as coincidence, but deep down, you knew it was something else. Something intelligent, something alive. This hidden layer is not just responsive, it's interactive, it's conscious, and it's listening to you all the time. You live in a world that's constantly trying to convince you that what's real is only what can be touched, bought, or proven. That feeling, energy, and intuition are secondary, soft, untrustworthy, or even dangerous. But the truth is, what you can't see is what actually builds the foundation of your life. Energy precedes form. Vibration precedes manifestation. The inner precedes the outer. And once you understand this, the entire framework of how you approach your reality changes. You are not powerless in the face of your circumstances. You are a co-creator, plugged into an invisible network of possibility, where every thought is a thread and every emotion adds texture. The field around you is constantly reconfiguring itself based on what you're projecting into it. You don't need to scream into the void. You only need to become aware of what you're transmitting. When you hold a belief for long enough, it begins to collapse into form. When you carry an emotion consistently, it begins to structure your timeline. You might think you're just living life, but you're actually sculpting it, moment by moment, through the invisible vibrations you send into this hidden layer. This is why healing doesn't always come from medicine, why abundance doesn't always come from working harder, why transformation doesn't always come from effort, because those things operate on the surface. But beneath that surface is a subtle, magnetic current that moves faster than logic and deeper than effort. Once you begin to tune into this field, life starts to take on a new texture. You begin to notice patterns, not of chaos, but of intelligent design. You start recognizing that things are not just happening to you, they're happening through you. You see how people respond to your energy more than your words. How situations reflect your internal state more than your actions. And with this recognition comes power, not the kind that controls or dominates, but the kind that harmonizes, that aligns, that allows. The greatest illusion ever sold is that this hidden dimension is far away, reserved for mystics or saints. But it's not. It's right here, right where you're sitting, right where you're breathing. The only thing that ever kept you from it was distraction. The constant noise of a world addicted to the surface, to the chase, to the illusion of control. But now, you've paused long enough to feel something else. A pulse beneath the story. A frequency behind the noise. And that's not just awareness, it's initiation. The door doesn't open outward, it opens inward. And the key has always been your vibration. You don't have to find the hidden dimension. You only have to match it. It's not a place you go. It's a reality you remember. And you've already started. Long before modern science reduced the universe to particles and equations, there were ancient ones who knew a different kind of truth. A truth not based on what could be seen or measured, but on what could be felt, perceived, and directly experienced through the expansion of consciousness. They didn't just believe in other dimensions, they lived in them. They spoke in symbols, preserved knowledge in coded language, and passed wisdom not just through words, but through vibration, ritual, and silence. They weren't trying to escape the world, they were revealing its layers. From the Vedic sages of India to the mystics of ancient Egypt, from the Taoist masters of China to the Hermetic initiates of Alexandria, there was a shared understanding. Reality is multi-layered. The world you see is only one frequency, one expression. There are others, realms that coexist with this one, not above or below, but interwoven, accessible only through an inner shift. This deeper reality was known by many names: the astral plane, the subtle realms, the fifth dimension, UA. But the message was always the same. Your outer world reflects your inner state, and when your consciousness expands, the world expands with it. The Vedas spoke of lokas, dhrans, planes of existence, layered like energetic sheaths surrounding your physical form, not distant heavens, but dimensions that unfold as you awaken. They described a universe where consciousness is primary and where the divine essence exists in all things. In the Upanishads, the journey inward was the journey to the ultimate truth, not through blind faith, but through direct knowing. The yogi's path was a map through dimensions, the breath, the mantra, the inner gaze, all tools to unlock the layers that modern society now calls imaginary. In Egypt, knowledge was encoded in the temples, in the geometry of the pyramids, in the language of the stars. The ancient priests understood that the human being was a living temple, and that within the body were portals to higher realms. The teachings of the mystery schools were never meant for the masses. Not because they were elitist, but because this knowledge required readiness, not of intellect, but of vibration. The initiate had to be willing to die to the world of illusion, to be reborn into truth. They had to step beyond appearances and align with what was unseen. Then there were the Hermetic teachings. Number 3. 1. There's 7 principles that describe the hidden architecture of reality. These weren't theories. They were observations of how energy behaves across all planes. The principle of mentalism. All is mind. The principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves. The principle of correspondence. As above, so below. These weren't spiritual slogans. They were instructions. The Hermeticists understood what modern science is just beginning to grasp, that matter is not the foundation of reality, but a dense crystallization of energy, shaped by consciousness. So why don't you hear about these truths in school? Why are these teachings treated like myth, dismissed as superstition, or worse, hidden altogether? Because truth is dangerous when it frees you. The systems of control that dominate the modern world cannot function if you remember who you are. They require you to believe that you are small, separate, and powerless. They need you to stay in survival mode, locked in the third dimension, chasing security, competing for resources, obeying systems that were built to extract your energy while feeding you the illusion of choice. When you awaken to the ancient truths, the spell begins to break. You see that time isn't linear, that thoughts create form, that your body is a transmitter of energy. You stop looking outside for power. You begin to understand that the divine isn't in the sky, but in your breath. You realize that you were never meant to be controlled. You were meant to create. So the suppression of these teachings wasn't accidental. It was strategic. They weren't lost. They were buried. And where they couldn't be buried, they were distorted, turned into religion, dogma. Systems of obedience disguised as paths to salvation. The symbols were kept, but their meanings hollowed out. The rituals remained, but the energy was drained. You were given watered-down versions of truths, once known to ignite the soul. And those who dared to preserve the originals were branded heretics, witches, or lunatics. But the knowledge never died. It went underground. It hid in symbols, in stories, in architecture, in chants. It lived in secret societies, in oral traditions, in dreams passed from teacher to student, heart to heart. And now, in this moment, it's rising again. Not just in books or teachings, but through your own remembering. Because here's the secret they hoped you'd never realize. The ancient wisdom isn't outside of you. It's encoded in your very being, in your cells, in your energy field. You are the library. You are the temple. You are the one you've been seeking. That's why the more you awaken, the more familiar it all feels. The symbols call to you. The words resonate deeply. The concepts don't feel new. They feel like something you've known all along but forgot, because you did. You agreed to forget, to come here, to play the game, to enter the illusion so deeply that remembering would be a revolution. And now you're here, right at the edge of remembering. That edge is not just a spiritual awakening, it's a dimensional shift. You're moving from a flat, mechanical view of life to a quantum, living, conscious universe, where you are both observer and participant. Where your thoughts shape timelines. Where emotion is energy in motion, bending your reality around you. Where the fifth dimension isn't an escape, but a frequency, one you are learning to sustain. The ancient ones were not primitive. They were advanced in a way modern technology can't replicate. Modern times under, because they mastered the technology of the soul. They understood energy, vibration, consciousness, and how to harmonize with the cosmic rhythm. And now that same rhythm is rising within you. It's the pull you feel toward truth. the restlessness you can't explain, the hunger for something more. It's your soul responding to a signal, the same signal that guided the sages, the same current that runs through all awakened beings. They tried to erase the truth, but truth cannot be destroyed. It returns, it always returns. And now, in this age of confusion and distraction, it returns through you, through your questions, through your longing, through your remembering. And here's what they fear most. Once you remember, you'll no longer be controlled. You'll no longer seek validation from a broken system. You'll no longer mistake structure for safety. You'll walk differently, think differently, create differently, because you'll know that the power isn't out there. It never was. It's within you. You were never meant to blindly follow. You were meant to awaken the ancient light coded in your DNA. You were meant to bridge the dimensions, to remember what the world forgot, and to live as a conscious creator in a universe that responds not to force, but to frequency. The truths they erased. You're rewriting them now, just by remembering. You've been taught to think in terms of places, countries, cities, houses, rooms. Even when it comes to the metaphysical, you imagine realms as destinations, places you travel to, step into, or ascend toward. The language of the third dimension conditions your mind to view everything as spatial, external, and separate. So when someone mentions the fifth dimension, it's natural to imagine it as a far-off mystical realm, tucked away in some hidden layer of the cosmos. But here's the truth. The fifth dimension is not a place you go. It's a frequency you tune into. And it's available to you right now. The fifth dimension is not bound by distance. It's not waiting in the sky or behind some invisible veil in the stars. It doesn't exist above your head or below your feet. It's right here, embedded within the very fabric of the moment you're living in. But unlike the dense and rigid nature of the third dimension, the fifth is fluid, formless, and felt. You don't reach it by moving. You access it by shifting your state of consciousness. Think of it this way. If the third dimension is a television channel full of static, schedules, and commercials for who you're supposed to be, then the fifth is a quiet, crystal-clear broadcast that's been running underneath the noise your entire life. But you won't hear it unless you choose to change the station. And that choice isn't made with effort. It's made with awareness. To understand the fifth dimension, you have to let go of the idea that reality is only made of things. You have to stop believing that everything that matters can be measured, touched, or proven. The fifth dimension doesn't play by those rules. It isn't physical, it's vibrational. It's not accessed through physical travel. It's accessed through inner alignment. When you shift your frequency, the dimension you perceive begins to shift with you. Here, separation begins to dissolve. You no longer see yourself as an isolated fragment walking through a world of objects. You begin to experience a deeper knowing that everything, and everyone, is connected. Not in theory, but in sensation. You feel it. You sense the invisible threads linking you to the people you love, the stranger you pass on the street, the earth beneath your feet. The illusion of being alone starts to fade, not because someone told you you're connected, but because your own vibration makes that truth undeniable. Time, as you've known it, begins to behave differently in this space. In the third dimension, time is a straight line. You move from past to present to future, like a train on a track. But in the fifth, time reveals itself as more like a canvas, where multiple possibilities coexist, and what you experience is directly shaped by the frequency you hold. A moment from the past can collapse into the now. A vision of the future can become real without years of effort. Possibilities that once seemed distant start arriving faster, because the fifth dimension is not governed by the laws of cause and effect. It's governed by resonance. When you are in this state, you realize that you don't have to chase what you desire. You simply align with it. Imagine holding a frequency of peace so coherent, so consistent, that it naturally repels chaos. Or imagine vibrating at such an authentic level of abundance that opportunities seem to find you without you looking. This isn't magic, it's mechanics, but not the mechanical logic you're used to. It's the mechanics of consciousness, where energy precedes matter, and inner reality becomes the blueprint for what appears outside of you. You've touched the edges of this before, in those moments of complete presence, when time seems to pause, and everything feels unusually vivid, when love floods your chest without a reason, when clarity drops in and everything just makes sense, even if only for a few seconds. Those are glimpses, little cracks in the third-dimensional wall, where the fifth dimension briefly floods through. Most people don't stay there long, not because they can't, but because they've never been shown how. They return to the familiar frequency of separation and effort because it's what they know. But the fifth dimension isn't reserved for mystics or monks. It's not a rare portal you have to be lucky enough to stumble through. It's a state of being that you can learn to embody, one conscious breath, one coherent emotion, one clear intention at a time. In this space, you become more aware of how you feel, not because you're emotional, but because emotion is energy in motion. It tells you what frequency you're carrying. And when you begin to honor that, you stop trying to force life and start allowing it to reflect who you are in your essence. You no longer need to manipulate circumstances. You realize your true power is in maintaining the energy that draws those circumstances to you. The fifth dimension doesn't make life perfect. It doesn't remove contrast or challenge, but it transforms your relationship with those challenges. Instead of reacting with fear or control, you respond with presence. You see the purpose in what's unfolding. You trust the timing, not because it's easy, but because it's aligned. And from that trust comes a peace that the third dimension could never give you, because it's not built on external stability, it's built on inner coherence. In this dimension, guidance flows more easily. You'll find that intuition becomes louder, synchronicities become normal, and inspiration arrives without warning. You'll start noticing how your outer world reshapes itself to match your inner shift, people changing around you, old patterns dissolving, unexpected breakthroughs unfolding, and you'll realize none of it was random. It was all feedback from a responsive field that's been mirroring your consciousness the entire time. The greatest secret is that you were never separated from this dimension. You were simply trained to ignore it, to doubt it, to stay fixated on what's visible, measurable, and safe. But the truth is, the fifth dimension has always been here. And when you choose to tune in, you don't lose the third. You simply stop being ruled by it. You still live in the world. You still engage with the structures, but you're no longer bound by them. You become a conscious traveler in a multi-layered reality. The shift into the fifth is not something that happens overnight. It's a returning, a remembering, a reconnection with your original state. It begins with the smallest moments, choosing stillness instead of reaction, choosing trust instead of fear, choosing alignment instead of effort, and with every choice, your frequency rises. The signal becomes clearer. The world begins to look different, not because the world changed, but because you did. And eventually, what once felt like a place you had to reach becomes the space you live from. You stop searching for the dimension, you start embodying it. You carry it with you, into your work, your relationships, your thoughts, your breath. You become the bridge between the worlds, and through you, the fifth dimension stops being a concept and becomes a lived reality. It's not somewhere you'll arrive, it's who you are when you stop forgetting. And you're remembering now. You've been taught that if you want something in life, you have to go out and get it. Push harder, hustle longer, sacrifice more. And maybe, if you're lucky, you'll get a taste of what you're after. That's the story you were given. The one repeated in movies, schools, family traditions, and cultural expectations. It sounds noble, even virtuous. The grind, the climb, the blood and sweat of earning your worth. But beneath that familiar narrative lies one of the greatest deceptions you've ever been sold. What if the universe doesn't respond to effort the way you've been led to believe? What if it doesn't reward exhaustion or sacrifice? What if reality is not a game of force, but a dance of frequency? In truth, it is not your willpower that moves mountains, it is your resonance, the energy you hold, the vibration you emit. That is the silent language the universe listens to, and it's responding to you constantly. Look around you, not just at what you have, but at how it feels. the relationships, the situations, the patterns in your life, they didn't arrive by chance. They are mirrors. Mirrors of your internal state. They don't reflect your wishes, they reflect your frequency. This is not punishment, it's precision. You are constantly in dialogue with a responsive universe, whether you're aware of it or not. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. That is the law of resonance. And once you understand it, everything changes. You stop wasting energy chasing things that feel distant or unreachable. You stop gripping so tightly, trying to force life into shape, because you realize that desire alone isn't enough. It's not what you say you want that shapes your life, it's what your vibration says you expect. Wanting something deeply while vibrating in lack only pushes it further away. Because on a vibrational level, the signal is not, I desire this. The signal is, I don't have this. And the universe, precise and impartial, reflects that state back to you with uncanny consistency. This is why affirmations sometimes fail, why goals fall flat, why people chase the same dream for years and never catch it, because they're vibrating in conflict, speaking abundance while radiating fear, envisioning love while vibrating in unworthiness, setting goals in hope but vibrating in doubt. But the moment you become a vibrational match to your desire, something subtle and powerful begins to shift. Reality softens, obstacles move, the things you were trying to chase start to find their way toward you. Not because you forced them to, but because you stopped repelling them. You became available to them. You became the version of yourself that already lives in that reality. This is not about pretending. It's not about faking positivity or forcing yourself to feel good. That's just another layer of effort dressed in spiritual clothing. Resonance isn't about masking your truth, it's about embodying it. It's about aligning so deeply with your desired state that it becomes who you are, not something you reach for. You don't chase peace. You cultivate it from within. You don't beg for love. You radiate it until the external world has no choice but to reflect it back. Think of a tuning fork. When you strike one fork and bring it near another, tuned to the same frequency, the second fork begins to vibrate, even without being touched. That's resonance. That's how reality works. When your internal state vibrates in harmony with a desired experience, that experience begins to vibrate toward you, not through control, but through coherence. This is not philosophy, it's physics. Quantum physics has already revealed that everything in the universe is energy, and that energy vibrates. Your thoughts have energy, your emotions have energy. Your beliefs, especially the subconscious ones, send out a signal, one that either calls in or repels the life you seek. Every thought you dwell on, every emotion you nurture, every story you tell yourself becomes part of your energetic blueprint. And your blueprint is not passive, it is magnetic. So ask yourself honestly, what am I resonating right now? If your desire is freedom, are you vibrating in trust or in fear of being trapped? If your desire is abundance, are you vibrating in sufficiency or in the anxiety of not enough? If your desire is love, are you resonating with openness and self-worth, or are you still carrying the belief that love must be earned? There is no shame in what you discover, only awareness. And awareness is the beginning of everything, because once you see where you are resonating, you have the power to shift. Not through struggle, but through presence, through intention, through choosing a new frequency, moment by moment, breath by breath. This is where the myth of hard work begins to dissolve. You were told that struggle is the price of success, that suffering earns you progress, that effort is the only currency life accepts. And yes, action has its place. Movement matters. But aligned action is very different from desperate motion. When your vibration is clear, your actions become like keys in a lock. Every step fits, every door opens. Because you're no longer moving against the current, you're flowing with it. When you align your frequency first, life becomes surprisingly efficient. Things happen with ease. Synchronicities line up. The right people appear. Solutions arrive before the problem is even fully formed. And it's not luck, it's resonance. The universe has always been trying to give you what you desire, it's just been waiting for you to match the signal. And that's the invitation in this moment. to stop fighting, to stop chasing, to stop believing that you must earn what your soul already knows is yours. Instead, become the version of you that already has it. Embody the state now. Walk like it's already here. Speak like it's already yours. Think from it, not about it. This is the shift. This is the secret. This is the truth that rewrites everything you've been told about how life works. The law of resonance doesn't reward force. It responds to clarity. It doesn't respond to noise. It responds to signal. And the clearer your signal, the faster your world begins to reorganize itself around it. So the question is not, what do I need to do? The deeper question is, who am I being? Because that, more than anything else, determines the timeline you're on, the people you attract, the opportunities that find you, and the reality that becomes yours. Let that sink in. You are not here to hustle yourself into alignment. You are here to remember that you were always the tuning fork, the code, the vibration that creates worlds. The more you live from that truth, the more effortless your manifestation becomes. Not because you worked harder, but because you finally remembered how to resonate. Every moment you're alive, you're vibrating. Not metaphorically, literally. At the most fundamental level, your body, your thoughts, your emotions, your entire consciousness is composed of energy in motion. This energy vibrates at specific frequencies, and those frequencies are not meaningless. They're magnetic. They are the signal you send out to the field of reality. And the truth is, life is not responding to your words, your wants, or even your actions nearly as much as it is responding to your vibration. You've probably heard the phrase, your thoughts create your reality. But that's only half the story. Thoughts alone are not enough. They are light, electric in nature, fast, subtle, powerful. But thoughts without emotion are like arrows without momentum. It's your feelings that give your thoughts direction. Emotion is magnetic. It grounds the thought into your energy field and begins the process of manifestation. Together, thought and emotion become vibration. And your vibration is what tells the universe who you are, not what you pretend to be, not what you wish for, but what you truly are at your core. This is why two people can want the same thing and receive completely different outcomes. One is aligned in frequency, the other is not. One feels what they're thinking and lives in the energy of that outcome. The other thinks about it but contradicts the frequency with doubt, fear, or frustration. The outer world doesn't respond to what you say. It mirrors what you hold. You can't fake vibration. The field doesn't speak words, reads energy. If you're saying, I am abundant, but underneath, you feel fear about your finances, that fear is the signal. If you visualize love but carry resentment or insecurity, that inner dissonance is what shapes your experience. Reality responds to your dominant frequency, not your occasional wish. This is where coherence becomes everything. Coherence means harmony between your heart and your mind. When your thoughts and emotions align, they create a unified signal, line, strong, steady, and clear. That's when the magnetic field around you begins to expand. That's when your presence becomes impactful. People feel it. Events bend toward you. Opportunities that once felt far away begin to unfold effortlessly. This is not wishful thinking. It's energetic mechanics. The heart is more than just a biological organ. It's an electromagnetic powerhouse. In fact, it generates a magnetic field far larger and more powerful than that of the brain. And that field isn't passive. It influences everything around you. The more coherent your heart and brain waves become, the stronger and more organized your energetic output becomes. It's like tuning your personal signal to the right station, and when you do, everything around you starts to match that frequency. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt someone's energy? They didn't have to speak. Their vibration said everything. Or maybe you've met someone whose presence made you feel calm, inspired, or even unsettled for no clear reason. That's resonance in action. It's happening constantly. You are broadcasting, and you are receiving, whether you're aware of it or not. And here's the key. Your vibration is not fixed. It's fluid. you can shift it in any moment, through breath, through presence, through choosing a different thought and pairing it with a more empowering emotion. Every time you do that, even for a few seconds, you alter your electromagnetic field. You change the signal you're sending, and reality listens. The outer world is not a static, unmovable force. It is alive, responsive. It rearranges itself to reflect the dominant patterns of your inner state. If your life feels chaotic, check the vibration you're living in. If you feel like things are always delayed, or people don't hear you, ask yourself, what signal am I transmitting? It's not about blame. It's about awareness, because once you become conscious of your vibration, you regain the power to choose it. This is why some people seem to manifest things effortlessly, while others struggle. It's not that one is more deserving, it's that one is more attuned. Manifestation isn't about begging the universe, it's about becoming a match to the reality you want to experience. When you hold the frequency of what you desire, when you feel it in your body, trust it in your heart, believe it in your mind, you magnetize it. It starts to find you. You don't have to chase, you simply have to align. But coherence doesn't happen by accident. It's cultivated. It's a practice. It begins with paying attention to your inner world. Are your thoughts in conflict with your emotions? Are your desires laced with doubt? Are you visualizing success but expecting failure? This inner dissonance creates a chaotic signal. It confuses the field. But when your inner dialogue becomes honest, when your heart supports the vision of your mind, the vibration becomes potent. That's when things begin to shift. It's also why trauma and emotional suppression can interfere with manifestation. If there are unresolved emotions buried beneath the surface, they will affect your vibration no matter how many affirmations you repeat. Energy doesn't lie. You must feel to heal. You must bring awareness to the emotional imprints that shape your vibration, because the moment you become conscious of them, you stop being controlled by them. You start to transmute them. And transmutation is one of your greatest powers. You can take the frequency of fear and, through presence, turn it into clarity. You can take the heaviness of grief and, through feeling it fully, transform it into depth and compassion. When you stop running from your emotions and start listening to them, they become fuel, they become teachers, they become the very frequencies that elevate your signal. This is how your inner world rearranges the outer, not by controlling outcomes, but by shifting the resonance from which outcomes arise. It's subtle, it's internal, but it's real. You've already seen it in your life. Moments when you were in flow, when things lined up without effort, when synchronicities seemed to follow you. That wasn't luck, that was alignment. You were in coherence, and the field responded. You are not here to hustle your way through life. You are here to become magnetic, to vibrate in such alignment with who you really are that life can't help but reflect that back to you. And this starts with tuning in, not reaching out. With regulating your energy before you try to shape your world, with asking not, what do I want, but, who am I being? When you step into coherence, you begin to emit a frequency that transcends fear, scarcity, and separation. You start living as a creator, not a reactor. The world stops feeling like something happening to you, and starts becoming something flowing from you. You don't push, you pull. You don't chase, you attract. Because your vibration is clear, magnetic, alive. And the truth is, your vibration is the most honest thing about you. It reveals what you believe, it echoes what you feel, it amplifies what you are. And, once you learn to master it, to guide it with love, presence, and intention, there's no part of your reality that won't begin to shift. This is the secret they don't teach in schools or systems, that your true power doesn't lie in effort. It lies in frequency, in the coherence between your heart and your mind, in the silent, invisible broadcast of your being, because when you vibrate in alignment with who you really are, the universe listens, and it answers in kind. From the very beginning, you were guided away from your power, not violently, not with warning, but subtly, quietly, through smiles, routines, and systems that seemed designed to help you. You were taught letters before intuition, facts before feeling, obedience before observation. You were taught how to sit still, how to raise your hand, how to color inside the lines, but you were never taught that reality responds to your frequency. You were never shown that your consciousness shapes the world around you. That wasn't part of the curriculum, 19C, because it was never meant to be. The structures that raised you, the systems you've spent your life moving through, education, media, religion, governance, were not built to expand your awareness. They were built to standardize it, to keep it contained, to train your attention toward the surface of life and away from its source. You were handed a frame, a way of seeing the world that was already defined before you could speak. And inside that frame, the invisible became imaginary, the mystical became foolish, and the intuitive became untrustworthy. This was not an accident, it was programming. From a young age, your natural abilities, your sensitivity, your imagination, your inner knowing, were gradually redirected. Instead of trusting your own inner world, you were conditioned to trust external authorities. Teachers knew best, experts knew truth, institutions knew what was real. And if something couldn't be tested, measured, or proven within their narrow parameters, it was discarded, and so were your experiences that didn't fit. Do you remember how often you were told to be realistic? That phrase was never about possibility, it was about limitation. It was a subtle code, used to keep you grounded in fear, in logic, in scarcity. To believe in magic, in energy, in unseen forces was naive. To listen to your body, your dreams, your intuition was irrational. That's how the programming works. Not by denying truth outright, but by devaluing it, by making you question your own knowing, by rewarding skepticism and punishing sensitivity. Even your emotions were coded. You were allowed to feel happy, polite, and productive. Anything outside that range was labeled a problem. Anger made you difficult. Sadness made you weak. Sensitivity made you dramatic. You were never told that emotion is energy in motion, a powerful guide to your frequency. Instead, you learned to suppress it, numb it, control it. You were trained to keep your frequency low without ever being taught what frequency even is. This is how you were trained to stay out of the fifth dimension, not with chains, but with distraction, not through oppression, but through normalization. You were immersed in a culture designed to keep you focused on the external. Achievements, appearances, opinions, possessions, constant validation from sources outside of yourself. That constant pull outward is not random. It keeps you tethered to the third dimension, realm, the realm of separation, struggle, and survival. Television, news, and entertainment didn't just show you stories, they shaped your energy. They taught you what to fear, what to desire, what to chase. They filled your subconscious with noise so persistent that silence became uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, you learned to avoid stillness, the very space where the higher dimensions speak the loudest. You were shown endless narratives of lack, conflict, and limitation, stories of winners and losers, of danger around every corner, of scarcity dressed up as realism. And over time, you absorbed those frequencies. They became your default setting, your reality. The media didn't have to lie to mislead you. All it needed to do was narrow your focus, to make sure your energy stayed reactive, anxious, fragmented, to ensure that your perception of life remained rooted in separation, HS, you versus them, success versus failure, right versus wrong. That polarity keeps you trapped. It keeps you from sensing the underlying unity that connects everything. The moment you begin to feel that unity, the illusion of division begins to dissolve, and that is something the system cannot afford. Because unity breeds sovereignty. When you remember that you are connected to everything, not as a concept, but as a living reality, you stop looking for permission to be free. You stop asking for validation. You stop outsourcing your power. And that's when you become untouchable. This is why you were trained to distrust your own inner world. Because once you turn inward and truly listen, you begin to perceive the hidden layer of reality that the world ignores. You begin to notice energy. You feel the presence behind the noise. You recognize the synchronicities not as luck, but as alignment. You experience life responding to your state of being, and suddenly, the old narrative no longer fits. The story of effort, hierarchy, and limitation begins to crack. But instead of being taught how to enter that state intentionally, you were taught to dismiss it, to laugh at it, to label it as irrational, fringe, or delusional. You were taught that reality is hard, that life is linear, that truth comes from authority, and anything that doesn't align with that worldview must be ignored. That's why when people begin to awaken, they often feel alone, because awakening is a departure from mass programming. It requires you to see things differently, to question what everyone else accepts without thought. It can feel isolating at first, like stepping outside a dream that everyone else is still asleep inside. But that isolation is temporary, because what you gain in return is clarity, presence, power. You begin to feel what's real again, not the manufactured version of life, but the living pulse beneath it. You start to remember who you were before the programming, before you were told what was possible, before your attention was hijacked. That version of you still lives within you, and it's waking up now. The moment you begin to question why you were trained to stay out of the fifth dimension is the moment you begin to step into it. You don't need to escape the world to do this. You just need to stop letting it dictate your reality. You reclaim your awareness. You shift your focus from noise to stillness, from fear to frequency, from reaction to resonance, and slowly, things begin to change. The world around you doesn't disappear, it just stops controlling you. You start to sense the deeper currents guiding your path. You feel yourself rising into a new level of awareness, one that was always available but buried beneath layers of noise. This is not New Age fantasy, it is ancient truth returning. And it's not coming from outside you, it's coming from the part of you that the system couldn't erase. You were never meant to live disconnected from your own power. You were never meant to be told what's real. You were meant to experience it, directly, fully, from within. That's the shift, that's the remembering. And once it begins, the training no longer works. The programming begins to unravel, and you begin to live, not as a product of your conditioning, but as a conscious creator of your reality. You don't need permission to see the truth, you only need the courage to look beyond the surface. The system trained you to stay asleep, but now, you're waking up, and there's no going back. Conscious creation doesn't begin with strategy, it doesn't start with vision boards, or scripting, or demanding that the universe fulfill your checklist. It starts with something far more subtle, yet infinitely more powerful: awareness. Before you can create consciously, you must become conscious. Not just awake in the sense of being alert, but awake in the sense of perceiving reality as it truly is, not as you've been told it is. And that awakening begins when you learn to see through the illusion. The illusion is not just the world around you, it's the assumptions you've internalized about what is possible, what is true, and who you are. It's the inherited beliefs, the societal programming, the stories you've repeated so many times they feel like facts. It's the voice that tells you what you should want, what's realistic, what you must fear, and how hard you must work to prove yourself. But when you begin to question that voice, when you begin to watch it instead of obey it, something shifts. That's the moment the initiation begins. This initiation is not something that happens to you. It's a decision you make, a turning inward, a willingness to look beneath the surface of things. You start noticing the ways you react, the thoughts that rise and fall, the emotional patterns that show up again and again like echoes from a forgotten place. You begin to realize that your outer world is a mirror of your inner state, IWLTSC, and with that realization, the game changes. You're no longer asleep to your power. You start to recognize that everything, every relationship, every delay, every success, every struggle, has been reflecting your vibration back to you all along. To step into conscious creation, you must first become a witness. That doesn't mean detachment. It means presence. It means catching yourself in the act of reacting and choosing to respond instead. It means seeing through the immediate story and asking what belief is feeding it. When you pause and observe your reality instead of racing through it, you begin to see the hidden architecture beneath it. That's the doorway, That's where conscious creation begins, not in the doing, but in the seeing. But awareness alone is not enough. It must become a practice, a lived experience. Otherwise, it fades back into concept, and you fall asleep again. That's why spiritual rituals aren't just optional, they're essential. Not because they make you worthy of receiving, but because they recalibrate your vibration. They're like tuning forks for your consciousness, helping you return to the frequency of who you really are, again and again. You can start simple, with breath. Because breath is the original rhythm. The first thing you did when you entered this world, and the last thing you'll do when you leave. Every breath carries the potential to bring you back into your body, back into the now, back into alignment. When your thoughts are racing and the illusion feels heavy, return to your breath. Inhale slowly, exhale fully. Let it clear the static from your field. Breathwork is more than a stress reliever. It's an energetic tool. It opens gateways in your nervous system. It moves stuck energy. It shifts your state. A few conscious breaths taken with intention can change the way you see your entire life, because it slows the mind, opens the heart, and creates space between reaction and choice. And in that space, creation begins. From there, begin building rituals that speak to your soul. They don't have to be elaborate. In fact, the simpler, the better. Light a candle each morning and speak your truth aloud. Sit in silence and feel your heartbeat. Write down 3 things you're grateful for and why. Place your hands over your chest and affirm what you want to feel that day. These are not meaningless acts. They are energetic anchors. They say to the universe, I am aware, I am ready, I am choosing this vibration on purpose. These practices begin to shift your baseline frequency. They train your system to hold a vibration of clarity instead of being pulled by the noise of the world. And the more consistently you do them, the more magnetic you become. Reality starts to bend toward you because you are no longer emitting the erratic frequencies of fear and confusion. You are broadcasting from a place of intentional alignment. Tuning your vibration is like adjusting an instrument. Every day, your energy can drift. That's natural. But your rituals are the way you bring yourself back into tune. Think of your thoughts as strings, your emotions as vibrations, your body as the vessel. When they're in harmony, you resonate clearly, and that resonance becomes your attractor field. It brings people, ideas, opportunities, and synchronicities into your path, without force, without control, just resonance. But the most sacred part of the initiation is learning to choose again and again. You will forget, you will fall back into old patterns. That's not failure, that's part of the process. Every time you remember, every time you wake up and choose awareness, breath, and intention again, you strengthen your alignment, you sharpen your frequency, you deepen your power. There will be moments when you feel resistance, when the old version of you tries to pull you back into fear, into scarcity, into proving. But if you stay present, if you breathe through the discomfort, if you choose alignment even when it would be easier to react, you will alchemize that resistance into clarity. That is conscious creation. Not the avoidance of challenge, but the transformation of it. Not pretending everything is light, but choosing to become light in the midst of darkness. This is not about controlling every aspect of your life. It's not about manipulating outcomes. It's about becoming so attuned to your inner reality that the outer world starts to organize around your truth. You don't create from panic, you create from presence. You don't create from lack, you create from fullness. When your inner state becomes the source instead of the reaction, you become a master of energy. And energy is the fabric of reality. In time, you'll notice the shift. The gap between desire and manifestation shortens. You feel less urgency, more trust. You begin to experience life as a dance rather than a battle. Because you are no longer waiting for permission to feel whole. You're no longer depending on the world to validate your worth. You're creating from the inside out. That's the true initiation. Not into power over life, but into partnership with it. You stop trying to dominate the external and begin co-creating with the field. You see signs where you used to see coincidence. You feel guidance where you used to feel confusion. You sense the alignment of things even when the outcome hasn't arrived yet, because you've learned to read the invisible language of vibration. This sacred practice of conscious creation doesn't end, it deepens. Each moment becomes an opportunity to realign, each breath a doorway, each choice a declaration. You're no longer a bystander in your own life. You're a sculptor, shaping reality with your frequency. And the more you live this way, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it's no longer a practice, it's who you are, and the illusion, once so convincing, begins to dissolve, not because you've escaped it, but because you've transcended it from within. And this is how you remember what you were never meant to forget, that you are the creator, and the world you live in is listening. There's a moment in your journey when everything changes, not because the world around you suddenly transforms, but because you do. It's not dramatic. There's no grand fanfare, no one announces it. But something subtle clicks inside of you, and from that moment on, the way you move through life begins to shift. You're no longer waiting for signs to prove it's working. You're no longer begging the universe for confirmation, you're simply being. And that being holds a frequency so clear, so magnetic, that life can't help but respond. You've spent years trying to make things happen, trying to prove yourself, trying to fix, to earn, to achieve. You've chased after goals, after people, after worth. And while some of it may have worked, most of it left you exhausted, caught in a cycle of striving, briefly receiving, and then striving again. That's what happens when your energy says one thing but your belief system says another. When your mouth speaks desire, but your body vibrates in doubt. The universe listens to frequency, not words. And when you're fragmented inside, life mirrors that fragmentation back to you. But something powerful happens when you begin to embody the frequency of the life you want. Not just think about it, not just visualize it, not just talk about it, but actually live it, breathe it, radiate it. When you stop trying to become and simply allow yourself to be, that shift is magnetic. That's when the illusion of effort begins to dissolve, and the world around you starts bending to meet the energy you're holding. You're not chasing anymore, you're drawing it in. You become the center of gravity. It's not about pretending. Embodying the frequency doesn't mean faking happiness or forcing gratitude. It means aligning your internal state with the truth of who you already are. It's about cleaning out the static of doubt, guilt, fear, and scarcity, so that the natural frequency of your being can broadcast without distortion. It's the difference between acting powerful and actually feeling your power, between talking about abundance and actually knowing you are abundance. When that knowing settles into your cells, your energy changes, and when your energy changes, everything else follows. You begin to notice the timing of things, the way someone calls just as you're thinking of them, the way opportunities arise out of nowhere that match exactly what you've been quietly preparing for. What used to feel like coincidences now feel like confirmations. Synchronicities become your new normal. Life begins to arrange itself around your alignment. Not because you've manipulated anything, but because your energy is now clear enough to receive what has always been trying to reach you. You stop needing everything to happen now because you trust it's already on its way. You stop asking when because you already feel the yes vibrating in your body. The need to control fades. The urgency dissolves, and in that space, peace moves in. That peace is not laziness, it's presence. It's a deep inner knowing that what's for you can't be lost, and that everything meant for you will find you when you are energetically available to receive it. There's a grace in this state that can't be explained to someone who's still trapped in the loop of striving. It's not arrogance, it's not spiritual bypassing, it's simply resonance. You walk differently, speak differently, think differently, and the world reacts to you differently because you're not leaking energy anymore. You're not broadcasting desperation. You're not vibrating in lack. You're anchored, and that anchoring is what changes everything. People begin to treat you according to the frequency you've claimed. You stop attracting relationships that mirror your old wounds, because those wounds are no longer vibrating at the surface. You stop finding yourself in situations that echo your fears because your field no longer matches those patterns. It's not that life becomes perfect, it's that you're no longer a match to chaos. You stop fighting for love because you've become the source of it. You stop craving validation because you've validated yourself. You stop hustling for freedom because you already feel free. This is embodiment. It's not about waiting to feel a certain way once the circumstances arrive. It's about becoming the version of yourself now who naturally draws those circumstances in. You don't wait to have the money to feel abundant. You feel abundant first, and the money aligns with that frequency. You don't wait to meet someone in order to feel loved. You cultivate the energy of love within you, and from that wholeness, love flows effortlessly. What used to feel like mountains now feel like air. The heaviness of forcing things lifts. You realize how much of your struggle came from trying to create outcomes from a place of misalignment, trying to drag your reality into shape rather than attuning your energy and letting life meet you halfway. Once you're tuned, life becomes symphonic, not always predictable, but deeply harmonious. And you begin to trust the pauses, the delays, the detours, because you understand they're not setbacks, they're recalibrations. The difference is subtle, but it's everything. In the old state, you ask for signs to reassure yourself that your manifestation is coming. In the embodied state, you are the sign. Your energy says it all. You don't need evidence to believe. Your belief is the evidence. And because you no longer require proof arrives. The frequency you hold becomes the magnet that organizes reality around you. And that's the secret most people miss. You're not here to manipulate outcomes. You're here to align your state of being so clearly with your desired reality that you become inseparable from it. The people who seem to effortlessly receive what they want aren't lucky. They're resonant. They've cleared the static. They've stopped chasing and started attracting, not by doing more, but by becoming more aligned, more open, more receptive. You don't have to earn this state. You remember it. It's your natural rhythm. Beneath the noise of conditioning, beneath the wounds and the programming, you already know how to live in alignment. You already know what it feels like to be in flow. It's not foreign, it's familiar. And the more you allow yourself to return to that state, the more it becomes your baseline. You begin to embody ease, not because life is always easy, but because your relationship to life has changed. You carry peace into chaos. You bring presence into problems. You remain grounded while the external shifts. That stability within you becomes a beacon. It draws in people, experiences, and opportunities that are reflections of the new self you've become. And all of it, every shift, every unfolding, begins with energy. Not effort, not pressure, not trying, but tuning. Embodiment is not something you do. It's who you are when you stop trying to be anything else. It's the natural outcome of remembering your essence and choosing to live from it, unapologetically, consistently, vibrationally. So don't ask how to make things happen. Ask how to become the version of you for whom they already do. Feel that version, live as that version, walk with that energy, breathe with that clarity, and watch as life reshapes itself to meet you where you truly are. When you embody the frequency, the question is no longer, how will it come? The answer becomes inevitable. You are no longer chasing the life you want, you are living it from the inside out. From the moment you first opened your eyes, you were welcomed into a world that seemed to have its own rhythm, its own rules, and its own order. But what you didn't realize was that much of what you were handed wasn't designed to empower you, it was designed to occupy you. The very things you've been told to value, the things that grab your attention every single day, are often the very distractions that keep you from noticing the deeper layers of reality humming just beneath the surface. You've been trained to look at glowing screens, to scroll endlessly, to keep yourself entertained, but not awakened. That constant noise is not random, it's engineered. The systems you move through daily thrive on keeping your energy fragmented so that you don't discover just how powerful you actually are. Think about how consumerism has been crafted to trap your focus. You're told that happiness is waiting in the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next possession that promises fulfillment. But the truth is, It's never the object that satisfies you, it's the illusion of completion, an illusion carefully constructed to keep you running in circles. When you finally get the thing you thought you needed, the high fades, and almost immediately, the void reopens. This cycle is not accidental, it's by design. Because if you are always searching outside yourself, you'll never turn inward to discover the infinite reservoir of energy and awareness that can't be bought, can't be owned, and can't be sold. Look at the media you consume, it's not neutral. From television dramas to news cycles, the world has been engineered into a stage of perpetual chaos. Drama isn't simply entertainment, it's emotional conditioning. Every headline dripping with fear, every broadcast amplifying division, every spectacle of conflict is deliberately amplified because fear is magnetic. Fear hooks your nervous system and locks your attention in survival mode. In survival mode, you cannot expand, you cannot elevate, you cannot shift your frequency. When you're glued to the endless drip of fear and outrage, you don't have the bandwidth to question who you really are or what you're truly capable of. This distraction matrix is a cage without bars. It doesn't need to physically trap you because it traps your energy, your time, and your focus. You scroll through feeds designed to exploit your dopamine, not because you lack willpower, but because the system has been calibrated to study your psychology and use it against you. Every notification, every red dot, every endless scroll is a small tug pulling your awareness away from the subtle inner signals of your higher self. The more fragmented your attention becomes, the harder it is for you to notice the synchronicities, the whispers, the openings that lead you into deeper dimensions of reality. Low-vibration media keeps you locked in that loop. Horror films, violent shows, gossip entertainment, nodder, they all carry a frequency, and when you immerse yourself in them, you attune to that vibration. You begin to normalize fear, conflict, jealousy, and scarcity as the natural rhythm of life. But ask yourself, who benefits from keeping you in that vibration? Who gains when you believe you are powerless, when you believe the world is chaotic beyond your control? Because, in truth, the frequency you carry is the very key to the reality you experience. When you are trained to live in fear and distraction, you unconsciously co-create a world that mirrors those vibrations back to you. The truth is, awakening doesn't require adding more to your life, it requires subtracting. It requires noticing how much of your attention has been colonized by external forces. When you start to step back and look at how the matrix of distraction is designed, you begin to see the cracks. You notice how advertisements are timed with your insecurities, how news cycles rise and fall with manufactured outrage, how even your leisure time is carefully programmed to keep you exhausted instead of nourished. The moment you see the pattern, you reclaim a piece of your power, because awareness itself begins to dissolve the illusion. But here's the deeper truth. Distraction isn't just about entertainment and consumption, it's about keeping you from silence. Silence terrifies the system because in silence, you reconnect. In silence, you hear your own thoughts. In silence, the veil's thin, and you begin to perceive the energy pulsing beneath the surface of everything. That silence is the doorway into the higher dimensions they don't want you to notice. And so, your life is filled with noise, with endless to-do lists, with the hum of distraction, so you never remember that the key to everything you've been searching for has been within you all along. When you start to unplug from this matrix, even just a little, you feel the difference immediately. Instead of being yanked around by consumer trends, you start to recognize the emptiness behind them. Instead of being addicted to the news cycle, you begin to sense the deeper rhythm of life itself. Instead of drowning in entertainment designed to keep you numb, you start to find joy in stillness, in creativity, in connection. Slowly, you remember that reality is not fixed, it is fluid, and your frequency is what shapes it. The reason they keep you distracted is because an awakened, centered, and focused being cannot be controlled. When you are attuned to higher vibrations, you don't need external validation, you don't need the endless consumption, you don't get hooked by the manufactured chaos. You become sovereign, and sovereignty is the one thing the system cannot tolerate. That is why the distractions are relentless. But the very moment you begin to pull your attention back inward, you start to rise above the game. And here's the paradox. They don't even need to hide the truth. The truth has always been in plain sight, but buried under layers of noise so you never stop long enough to notice it. Every ancient teaching, every whisper of higher wisdom, has pointed you to the same truth. You are not powerless, you are not small, and you are not trapped. The only prison is the one built through your attention, and once you take that attention back, the walls dissolve like mist. So the question becomes, how much longer will you let the distractions define you? How much longer will you allow consumerism, drama, and chaos to siphon your energy? Because the moment you begin to reclaim your focus, the game changes. Reality itself begins to respond to you in new ways. Coincidences align. Clarity returns. And the secret dimension that was hidden from you begins to reveal itself. Not because it was gone, but because you finally stopped being distracted long enough to see it. You've probably felt it before, that quiet urge to run away, to leave behind the noise, the heaviness, the chaos of a world that often feels like a game you never agreed to play. Maybe you've fantasized about disappearing into nature, starting fresh somewhere new, or abandoning everything just to find peace. That desire is natural, but it comes from a misunderstanding. The point was never to run. The point was to awaken within the very world you're standing in now, because you don't escape the game by leaving it. You escape the game by shifting dimensions inside of it. The illusion you were raised in trained you to see reality as rigid, fixed, unyielding. Things are the way they are. People don't change. Life is hard. Time is limited. Resources are scarce. That's the programming. It keeps you locked in a narrow range of awareness where survival feels like the only option. And in that frame, the idea of freedom feels far away. The only solution seems to be escape. But what if the truth is that freedom doesn't come from leaving the world, but from living in it differently? What if the entire structure of reality is more flexible than you've been led to believe? When you shift within, the world you see shifts with you. The rules you thought were solid begin to soften. The obstacles that once seemed immovable begin to bend. Life itself becomes responsive, animated, almost playful. You start to notice that the same world that once felt like a cage is actually a mirror. And when you change your frequency, the mirror reflects back something new. You realize that what you thought of as reality was actually just your perception of it. And perception, unlike the material walls around you, can change in an instant. This is why some people live in the same city, work the same job, walk the same streets as everyone else, yet seem to experience a completely different reality. To the unawakened eye, nothing external has changed. But internally, everything has shifted. They see possibilities where others see limitations. They encounter kindness where others encounter conflict. They find opportunities where others only see closed doors. This isn't luck, it's resonance. They're living in the same world, but not from the same dimension. You don't need to abandon your life to step into this shift. You don't need to run to the mountains or cut ties with society. You simply need to stop giving power to the old game. The game thrives on your belief in struggle, separation, and lack. It keeps you chasing things outside yourself, distracted by comparison, addicted to approval, and terrified of failure. It keeps you reactive instead of creative. But once you stop feeding it with your attention, once you step back and realize that the rules only bind you if you believe in them, you begin to see that the game isn't a prison, it's a stage, and you've been the actor and the director all along. That's the paradox. You can't escape the game by running, because running means you're still playing by its rules. You escape by remembering that the game is not ultimate reality. It's one layer, one dimension of experience. And when you no longer identify solely with it, you move beyond it. You don't leave the stage. You simply start performing with awareness, improvising instead of obeying, creating instead of reacting. Suddenly, what once felt heavy becomes light. What once felt rigid becomes fluid. What once felt meaningless begins to reveal its hidden purpose. The shift doesn't mean you float away from life or ignore responsibilities. It doesn't mean you stop caring about the world. In fact, it makes you more engaged than ever, but in a different way. You no longer act from fear or scarcity. You no longer try to prove yourself. You no longer force your will onto reality. You live from alignment, and in that alignment, your actions carry more power than all the striving in the world. You move through the same spaces as everyone else, but you experience them as alive. The trees speak, the air feels charged. Synchronicities dance around you like breadcrumbs, guiding you forward. The world becomes enchanted again, not because it changed, but because you did. This is how the illusion breaks down. You realize that the heaviness of the game wasn't in the world itself, it was in the lens you were given. That lens was designed to keep you in survival mode, disconnected from the truth of your own power. But once you start to see beyond it, you understand that life is more like a dream than a machine. And in a dream, the dreamer has influence. You don't control every detail, but your energy shapes the tone, the flow, the direction. You become a conscious participant instead of an unconscious pawn. It's easy to think that awakening means leaving everything behind. But what if the real mastery is learning to remain in the middle of it all, without being consumed? To walk into the same office, the same store, the same crowded city street, but carry yourself with such alignment that the space bends to your vibration. To have conversations where the energy shifts simply because of your presence. To step into situations that once drained you and discover that they no longer touch you because you are no longer resonating with them. That is freedom. Not running, not hiding, living fully awake in the very place you once thought you needed to escape. And when you live this way, you realize something extraordinary. You were never trapped. The trap was perception. The game was never in control of you. You were in control of how you played it all along. Every challenge, every conflict, every moment of struggle was a test, not of your strength to endure, but of your willingness to awaken. To see through the illusion, to choose alignment over reaction, to choose resonance over resistance. And once you choose, the game loses its grip. You don't need to retreat to find yourself. You don't need to dismantle the world to feel free. You only need to remember that freedom is a state of consciousness. It's the frequency you embody. And once you hold that frequency, the world reshapes around you. The job shifts, the relationships evolve, the timing aligns. Not because you forced them, but because you stepped into a dimension where they naturally reflect your truth. So don't run, don't fight, don't waste your energy trying to beat the game. Instead, rise within it, play it differently. Hold your frequency steady no matter what's happening outside you. Trust the resonance more than the rules. Live as though the world is already flexible, responsive, and alive, because it is. And the more you live that way, the more it reveals itself to you. The walls dissolve, the limits fade, and you discover that the very game you once thought you had to escape was always the portal to your awakening. You are still here, in this world, but no longer of it. You walk among the same streets, breathe the same air, interact with the same people, but you are no longer playing the old role. You are living from a new dimension, one that was always here, hidden in plain sight. And once you see it, once you embody it, you realize the truth. You never had to escape. You only had to remember. All along, you've been searching for something you thought was hidden, something distant, something locked away in another place. You've chased the idea that there was a doorway you had to find, a code you had to crack, a key you had to earn before you could step into the secret dimension. You imagined it as a place you had to enter, a destination waiting for the worthy, a world separate from the one you've been living in. But here's the truth you've been circling around, the truth you've been sensing in every synchronicity and every crack in the illusion. You were never outside of it. You don't enter the secret dimension. You remember that you were always in it. Awakening is not about going somewhere else. It's not about leaving this world behind or escaping into some ethereal realm. It's about peeling back the layers of distortion that were placed over your perception. It's about recognizing that the extraordinary has always been hidden within the ordinary, that the miraculous has always been woven into what you thought was mundane. Awakening is remembering what you knew before the conditioning, before the programming, before the distractions that trained you to doubt your own knowing. The dimension you've been searching for has been the ground beneath your feet, the air you breathe, the silence between your thoughts. It was never out there, it has always been here, waiting for you to see it. And when you finally glimpse it, when the veil parts even for a moment, something irreversible happens. You can't go back to believing that the illusion is all there is. You can't unsee what you've seen. Once the colors of reality deepen, once the synchronicities stop feeling like coincidences and start feeling like a language, once you feel the living pulse of energy behind everything, the old version of life simply doesn't hold the same weight. You still walk the same streets, talk to the same people, live in the same body, end fair. But nothing is the same. The world becomes animated, alive, flexible. You're no longer a passive participant being carried along by forces outside of you. You're a co-creator, awake in the very game you used to think was fixed. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes perfect, free of challenge or contrast. Challenges still arise, but you see them differently. They're no longer punishments or roadblocks. They are mirrors, invitations, calibrations. Every event becomes a chance to choose resonance. Every setback becomes a reminder of your power to shift. You stop fighting life and start dancing with it, because you realize that the rhythm has always been yours. The dimension you thought was hidden reveals itself as the truth that's been running through every moment since the beginning. You weren't locked out of it, you were only asleep to it. And now, as you stand in this recognition, you realize something profound. Your awakening was never about becoming something new. It was about returning to what you already are. You don't need to add anything to yourself. You don't need to chase or strive. You only need to remember. Remember that your consciousness has always been the bridge. Remember that your heart has always been the compass. Remember that your frequency has always been the code. The secret dimension is not separate from you. It is you, vibrating, alive, remembering itself through your eyes. This is why, once you awaken, you stop searching outside for validation. You stop grasping for proof, because you understand that the proof was never external. The proof is in the way your reality reshapes itself to meet you. The proof is in the way coincidences become alignments, the way timing becomes precise, the way people, places, and experiences show up like perfectly placed puzzle pieces. The proof is in the way your inner state is mirrored back to you so flawlessly that you can no longer doubt that the universe has always been listening, and you realize that it wasn't the world that changed, it was you. You shifted your lens, and the hidden layer of reality came into focus. The final glimpse is not an ending, it is a beginning. It's the moment you understand that your real life is only just unfolding. The life you lived before was a rehearsal, a training ground, a dream that prepared you for waking. The chasing, the struggling, the longing, all of it was leading you here. And now, instead of moving through life half asleep, reacting and reaching, you live as a conscious being, aware of the game, aware of the illusion, aware of the infinite possibilities that open when you choose to align. You don't leave the old world behind. You live in it differently. You bring light into the same streets, the same conversations, the same body. You become the evidence of the secret dimension, simply by being who you are. And as you embody this awareness, you begin to notice that the dimension doesn't just reveal itself once, it continues to unfold, layer after layer, depth after depth. As you expand your capacity to see, the more you remember, the more you realize there is no limit to what can be revealed. The truth is infinite, and you are infinite within it. This is why you were never meant to escape the world, you were meant to illuminate it, to live in it as one who sees, one who remembers, one who no longer confuses the shadows for the substance. You can feel it now, the shift inside you that can't be undone, the recognition that you were always part of something bigger, something vaster, something alive with intelligence, the recognition that every breath, every heartbeat, every thought is part of that great, living tapestry. The recognition that your journey was never about finding the secret dimension, but about remembering that you never left it. And once you see that truth, the story you live changes forever. The secret was never hidden from you, it was hidden by you, until you were ready to remember. And now, you are ready to live not as one who searches, but as one who embodies, ready to walk, not as one who doubts, but as one who knows, ready to step fully into your real life, the one that begins the moment you remember that you were always in it.